Hey there, it's Dr. Jones. This is going to be part one of Unit 1 or Lecture 1 of Unit 1. And what I want to talk about this time is what do I believe in terms of ethics? And so let's start off with some stuff that's outside of your reading material but pertains directly to it. So here's a story. In Europe, a woman was near death from a special kind of cancer. There was one drug that the doctors thought might save her. It was a form of radium that a druggist in the same town had recently discovered. The drug was expensive to make, but the druggist was charging 10 times what the drug cost him to make. He paid $200 for the radium and charged $2,000 for a small dose of the drug. The sick woman's husband, Heinz, went to everyone he knew to borrow the money, but he could only get together about $1,000, or half of what it cost. He told the druggist that his wife was dying and he asked him to sell it cheaper or let him pay it later. But the druggist said, "No, I discovered the drug. I'm going to make money from it." Heinz got desperate, broke into the man's store to steal the drug for his wife. Now, the question for you is, should the husband have done that? And then why or why not? So this story is not asking you to come up with the specific answer. It's asking you to come up with your answer. And we can consider all different options here. And in fact, we're going to go through as part of this, we're going to go through some of the reasons that people answer this just a little bit differently. Kohlberg's stages of moral development are the reason that we have this story of Heinz and his wife. And what Kohlberg was trying to say with these different stages is that depending upon your level of moral development, you will answer differently to this question of did Heinz do the right thing? And so if we went back, and let me do that real quick. Let me go back here for a moment. What are some possible answers? So some people might say, yeah, Heinz had exactly the right idea. Heinz needed to save his wife, and so the druggist was charging way too much, so Heinz had every right to do that. Or, you know, it's wrong. Heinz knew that it was wrong, but the greater good was to save his wife's life. And if he's willing to go to jail for that, more power to the man. Or maybe you say, well, it's wrong. It's wrong to steal. And no matter what the consequences for Heinz and his wife were, it's wrong to steal and he shouldn't have done it. Or maybe it's wrong, but so is the druggist wrong. And as you look at it, both of them are wrong and they need to come up with a different answer. They need to force the issue, and maybe Heinz and his friends could get a law, or they could put pressure on the druggist, or go protest in front of the druggist's store to force him to do things. Any number of ways that people might answer this. And I ask this of my students in several different classes. And I have them I give them a 3x5 card, and I have them put their name on it so they can get credit for doing this. And then I have them do the two answers. One, yes or no, should Heinz have done this? And then two, give me your reason. And then I'll go through Kohlberg's moral development and we'll talk about it. And I have consistent answers all the way through, and pretty much the ones that I just gave to you are most of those consistent answers. Um, Things are just right or wrong, or he shouldn't do it because he's going to go to jail, or he should do it because even if he goes to jail, his wife will live, or he should do it because the druggist is more wrong than Heinz is for stealing, etc. So let's take a look at what Kohlberg would say about this. So Kohlberg looks at this and more or less moral development for most of us in Kohlberg's eyes is that idea that you, as you grow up, will learn to attack uh, ethical problems, moral dilemmas in different ways. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on these. I'll put these slides up there for you that you can download them and look at them. But here are 5 stages that he uses. I'm not doing the 6th stage because the 6th stage is relatively um, unattainable from most of the writings out there. It's kind of a Mother Teresa Gandhi-ish kind of thing of perfect transcendentalism or whatever. But let's do the first ones. So number 1, obedience and punishment. If you do something wrong, you're going to get punished. If you do something right, you're going to be okay. So if somebody says Heinz will go to jail if he does that, so he shouldn't do it, that's more or less stage 1. And this is what little children are like. Hey, don't put your hand on the stove, you'll burn it. Or don't get up again or you get spanking or whatever it is. And we're not talking ethics of disciplinary measures or anything like that. We're just saying, if you do this, this is going to happen. And that's what stage 1 is all about. Stage 2 is a little higher level. So now you get to make some decisions out here, and the decisions aren't, will I get smacked? The decisions are, what's in my best interest? And that's what you want to look for. Whatever is in my best interest is the path I'm going to go. So instead of just looking at stimulus response, as you would in psychological terms, you're looking out here at weighing out what your options are and which one brings you the best possibility. Stage 3, you move up better and you realize, hey, I'm not the only person out here. Not everything is about me. I need to get along with everybody else. And so, what's going to keep me on that path? There are things that I can do that are in my best interest, but I also have to realize that these things affect other people. And so, I want to make sure that I have good interpersonal relationships. So, I've moved past whack for getting bad, and I've moved past, hey, it's all about me. And I'm now into what's going to get me along with everybody else. I'm still going to want the things I want, but I'm going to move past just a little bit and say I've still got to be relatively a good citizen out there. Stage 4, we recognize not only is it not all about us, but there's society. So I'm not just getting along with my friend or my family out there. I've got larger society. Consider a small child. Let's go back to stage 1 for a second. Consider a very small child. And you're trying to put that very small child to bed. And you say to that child, go to bed. And the child does like my son did, and he would pop out of bed and run down the stairs, and we'd see him and go, oh, and he'd scared, run. Well, he wouldn't really be scared. It was a game, but he'd run back up, jump into the crib, and he'd be there. That's that first stage. The second stage would be, hey, if I get out, I can go get me a cookie. And I can go down there and get that cookie, and I really want that cookie, but I need to be really careful and creep down as I'm going on down. Or if I do something really good for dad, he's going to let me stay up an extra 5 minutes and then I can get a cookie. Stage 3. You know, mom and dad sure are happier if I stay in bed. And it causes them to, get headaches and they get really cranky. So I don't want to make them cranky, so I'll stay in bed. Stage 4. What if everybody stayed up later than they needed to. So now I'm staying up later. That wakes the other baby, and that baby, she cries. And so now everybody has to get up, and everybody's all upset about it. So you see how we kind of move out of ourselves when we start thinking about larger things out there. The final one of these is the social contract, and you'll recognize that from uh, your readings as well. That kind of idea that we want society to get along, and if these things happen in society, then everybody's rights are protected, and that becomes pretty important. It also becomes important for times like in Heinz's situation here, if he were believing that this druggist's actions were completely wrong and needed to be changed, he might stage a protest with his friends and family out in front of the druggists to be able to bring some attention, or he might even do something relatively illegal. He and his friends and family go into the drugstore and have a sit down, knowing that they're probably going to get arrested for trespassing and taken away. But in the larger social contract of this thing, it would draw attention to what he perceives as the profit motive for the druggist being completely unreasonable in what he's doing, and it causes the death of his wife. And so here's the larger protest out there. So Kohlberg looks at moral development as you move up. You think about things differently. Now, in our textbook, Unit 1 talks about different kinds of theories. And so, briefly, I want to hit just this idea of credo to end out this lecture. So, the idea of a credo is, what are you all about? How do you define yourself? Now, we've looked at Heinz and his wife, his dying wife, and how Heinz could be defined would be by that reaction that Heinz has to go ahead and um, to steal for his wife. And we have to look at that and say, was he right or was he wrong? And we define ourselves partially by how we view Heinz and his actions. Corporations have to define themselves as well. And what I want to do is take a look at some of their credos. Now, before we do that, there are several other credos from your text that you can pick up from here. These are examples of those kinds of credos out there. What would a person not do? This is a line that I just won't cross. But you can also do this as a positive thing. Take a look at Johnson and Johnson's credo, and I don't want to read it word for word. You can do that on your own. But essentially, if you read this, as it starts off, we believe our first responsibility is to the patients, doctors, and nurses, to mothers and fathers, and others who use our products and services. So the way Johnson and Johnson looks at um, who they are is in relationship to all of those who use their products, whether as from a first hand, in other words, I buy a bandage that Johnson and Johnson has made, or I buy a pharmaceutical product and I use it for myself, or if you're a practitioner, a doctor, nurse, um, who uses it on a patient, and therefore, is not the intended recipient of it, but still has to use that product. And that is how they first off define themselves. It's not the only way, but it is part of the way. And then everything builds off of that. Notice we are responsible to our employees who work with us throughout the world. So they recognize that they are in the world and they have constituents out there who are others that work with them and for them in different spots. we are responsible to the communities that they live in. So, in other words, they recognize that from a social responsibility standpoint, that they have um, obligations to where they are operating, as well as who they're operating with and who are their users. And finally, they also understand the fiduciary responsibility they have to their stockholders to make a profit. And so their credo is fairly long, actually. You can go to this web page right here, follow this URL, and you can read the entire thing. But they show all the different categories that they think are part of their credo. I want to contrast that with Industrial Controls Company, ICC. And you go to this web page and you can see their credo. This is just part of their credo too, but it has a very different feel. So let's just read parts of it. We believe we are not in the industrial automation business, but in the people business. Providing engineering services and control panels is simply the channel we use to create the highest level of customer satisfaction. Our primary objective is to ensure the customer is overjoyed with us and comes back every chance they get. We'll achieve this satisfaction and loyalty by delivering the finest engineering services and control systems ahead of schedule, below budget, all accompanied by knock your socks off service and support. Good enough is not part of our vocabulary. Lastly, we are committed to making a profit. And yes, these are excerpts out of it, but notice the big difference there. When you go and take a look at Johnson and Johnson's, you see that they are looking at themselves in their credo, whether it's true in their actions or not. You see in their credo that they are looking at moral responsibilities that they have to all the different stakeholders, whether it's from the stockholders all the way to the patients and doctors and nurses and communities and their employees. Industrial Controls Company, I don't get a sense of that at all. I'm not saying that they're immoral. I'm just saying that everything here is about the transaction that they have, either with a stockholder or with the customer. And it's all about the quality of that transaction. And that's a very, very different kind of concept. Again, it's not bad, it's different. As a credo, this is very materialistic versus the other one, which seems to be more empathetic. Folks, that's all for this one. Thanks.